Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
I am delighted to have this session. We're just trying to roll out more support to our grantees on the topic of serving internationally trained professionals under AEL. And just super excited to have Letty Ferreira and Trevor Sheely from WES here. And they're going to talk about a lot of resources that are available, credentialing guides, overall support for the population of immigrants and refugees who are skilled professionals, and provide some technical assistance on evaluation of foreign credentials. These are super good topics and great resources from WES. And I just wanted to add that WES provided just extraordinary technical assistance to Texas and a strong group of providers starting in 2018 when we became part of their Skilled Immigrant Integration Network. So that effort really helped to jumpstart us and get the support in the network and find the champions and programs across the state and roll out more expertise to the field. So we really appreciate the work that they've done, and I'm glad that we finally have them here in a separate topic on their own, speaking about all the resources that they have.
Today, we're going to do introductions, of course, and we'll do a little bit about WES, so you can learn more about our company organization. We'll talk about credential evaluations and recognitions, what that is, what the difference is, and then we'll go into some resources as well. So my name is Letty Ferreira. I am a program manager here at WES under the State and Local Networks team. My background is in adult education, so I actually spent 6 years in adult education in the state of Texas at Austin Community College as a program coordinator for their internationally trained professionals program that we started there when I got started there. Before that, I worked in higher education. So I worked at universities as director of admissions, as a trainer for advisors. So my background has really been higher ed, but for the past 2 years, I've been here at WES overseeing the Skilled Immigrant Integration Program.
And I'm Trevor Sheely. I'm the program specialist with our state and local team, working with Letty on the SIP network and the larger SIP alumni network, which is a network of 45 and more communities across the US supporting internationally trained immigrants and refugees. I've been at WES for 4 years and I'm based in New York, but prior to this worked in refugee resettlement and for a number of WES's partners that I think some of the information and data that we'll be using are places that I worked for. Thank you all for having us today. We're excited to talk more about what we do.
So just to tell you a little bit about WES, we were founded in 1974, so we're actually celebrating 50 years as an organization. We are a nonprofit social enterprise that supports the educational, economic, and social inclusion of immigrants, refugees, and international students. From evaluating academic credentials to shaping policy, designing programs, and providing philanthropic funding, we partner with a diverse set of organizations, leaders, and networks to uplift individuals and drive systems change. And some of those organizations include Texas AEL, as well as Synergy Texas, if you haven't heard of them. Our vision is that everyone is able to put their education, experience, and skills to work anywhere in the world. And our mission is that we help people learn, work, and thrive in new places. We help society recognize the value of people's education and experience.
Today, really what we're talking about is how to support internationally trained immigrants and refugees. When we're talking about this population, what we really are talking about and trying to combat is skills underutilization. Many people might be familiar with the term brain waste, which is much more commonly used, but we've sort of moved away from that because it has some negative connotations that are not on the fault of the individual experiencing it. There are many societal barriers that prevent people from utilizing their full skills. When we talk about skills underutilization, what we are talking about is someone's inability to fully utilize their skills and education in the labor market. This could be someone who is educated abroad, had a bachelor's, master's, or PhD, and then comes to the US and finds that they're unable to utilize this education or professional experience. Many people experience this. They have to start from scratch. The common example people give is just being in a taxi and your taxi driver talks about what they did in their home country. Many times it's often they were a physician or something that's a very highly trained, highly skilled profession, but because of many barriers in the US, they're unable to practice that profession here. Like I mentioned, those affected are those with post-secondary degrees or certification, and also professional experiences in other countries. And those who WES seeks to support is people who would like to continue pursuing those professions that they practice abroad in the US. As a whole, this is from the 2022 American Community Survey data. So there are 28 million immigrant workers in the US. 32% hold a bachelor's degree or higher. So that's fully 1/3 of people who could be affected by skills underutilization. Of this population, typically it's a smaller amount. So around 25% of immigrants and refugees with bachelor's degrees or higher in the US experience skills underutilization. So this would be around 2 million individuals. In Texas, the number is actually higher than the national average. So 30.3% of immigrants and refugees in Texas who have a bachelor's degree or higher are in jobs where they do not need to have a bachelor's degree. They're not fully able to utilize their full potential. It's often not the fault of the individual. They would like to continue doing what they did abroad, but there are many barriers that prevent them from doing that. Structurally, a lot of these can be due to insufficient, unaffordable, or misaligned training and workforce programs, systematic inequities such as racism, xenophobia, and nativism. This is a huge problem, just telling immigrants, refugees that they're not capable of performing in the American job market, or their education that was obtained abroad is not equivalent to an American degree. This is not true, and that's really where WES comes in and tries to prevent misinformation and prejudice. There's also lots of limited infrastructure within employers to support immigrants and refugees. So typically when people come here, they're just trying to get a job to be able to support themselves and their family right away. People do not have the time to be able to get specific English training if that's what they're missing, or different ways of upskilling, different forms of training that would allow them to continue this work in the American job market. And then also a large problem that WES works on the advocacy side is restrictive licensing policies that prevent people from entering licensed professions like being a physician, a nurse, an accountant, a teacher in the US. Apart from these structural barriers, though, are also many individual barriers. There's a number of different programs and resources that WES supports and that WES's partners contribute or do, like many of you in this room. People may have limited English language proficiency. We're here with adult educators. I think that this is something that many people would be familiar with. A lack of US work experience and social capital are also two huge ones. And then WES's bread and butter, which is inadequate recognition of credentials and experience. So WES is a credential evaluator. That essentially is just proving that someone's credentials earned abroad, so their degrees or experience are equivalent to that in the US, and then limited access to training or wraparound supports and inadequate career guidance. So a large part of our work here is just really trying to help people understand that one's education and experience earned abroad is valuable and is worth education experience earned in the US, that people can continue what they've been doing. And if they'd like to continue in their career journey, that it's not starting from scratch, that you can start from where you were abroad. And that's really what we're working on here. There are many different ways to facilitate inclusion among those barriers that I mentioned. So English proficiency, community colleges offer English language classes. There's also public libraries, different contextualized ELL courses that pertain to several different professions, intensive courses. Volunteering is a potential option for people to improve their language, and also conversation partnerships. A lack of US work experience or social capital. This is the big barrier, is US experience. Again, these are several different examples of things that people can do to overcome that barrier by engaging in community college courses, volunteering, interning, being an apprentice, receiving a certification, or going back and getting another degree, just to show that they are capable of doing this and that they actually have something on the resume to show that they have experience working in the US. Two other things, social capital. This is a huge barrier for a lot of people, is that if they come to the US without professional connections, something like 80% of jobs in the US are found by networking. So without any connections, of course, it's very difficult to get there. We're supporting different programs that help others figure out how to do this, how to network, how to associate with others professionally. And then these are some examples of how to go about doing that. So immigrant serving organizations may host different programs There are mentorship programs to help people understand how a profession is in the US, how it's set up, and to connect them professionally with others in the same occupation. Volunteering, contextualized ELL courses, and online supports. And then credential recognition is another way just to prove or to have someone's credentials accepted. An institution that stands in the way of someone getting into the profession, what we are really trying to get them to do is to recognize that these credentials are valid and will allow them to pass into the next stage for licensure, credit transfer, so that would be entering another degree, or for employment.
I will talk a little bit about credential recognition and evaluation, but before we move to the next slide, I wanted to ask a question for the chat. Does anybody know the difference between translation and evaluation? So if I say you need a translation of your transcripts versus I say you need an evaluation of your transcripts, is there a difference? And if so, what might that be? I think this is an important question because this is something that our ESL students who have international transcripts sometimes don't understand that there is a difference there. They're so used to translating because they're learning a new language that they're not sure what that would be then an evaluation. Translation is an English evaluation, is seeing if it's equivalent to a degree in the USA. Evaluation is looking at the education and how it fits into the US education system. That's super important. It really does depend on the country that you're going into, what this process will look like. And that's what's really confusing to students is that other countries do have different systems. And so they're coming from a country that might have a Ministry of Education where all of this is nicely lined up for them. And they're coming into the US that doesn't have something quite like that. Over the next few slides, we really want to make sure you understand those differences so that then you can transfer that knowledge to your students. We have evaluation and recognition. So we talked about translation and evaluation. We don't have a slide specifically for that, but I think that is important as someone who taught an internationally trained professionals course for a few years and advised them for many years. I think that's a really important distinction for them to understand. But the difference between evaluation and recognition is even a step further. Evaluation is the coursework and authentication, but it really compares the international academic qualifications to the standards in the US. And I want to be clear that although we say standards in the US, that doesn't automatically mean the standards in the US are higher. Sometimes actually international standards are higher than US standards. Something for students to understand as well. It provides that US academic equivalency. For example, many bachelor's degrees in India are 3 years, whereas our bachelor's are 4 years. And that's because they have a different academic standard and recognition there. That doesn't mean that that doesn't count as a bachelor's test. Or a master's degree somewhere else could be 3 years, whereas here it would only be 2 years. That could be the same equivalent to. And it helps institutions recipients better understand the academic background of individuals who hold credentials earned abroad. In the United States, sometimes we can be a little overwhelmed with how much we have going on. And some people might call that maybe lazy. So when we look at transcripts that are international and they look different than ours, they look different than the US ones, somebody might take a look at that and be like, I don't understand that, and move on from their transcripts. And we don't want that to happen. So an evaluation report will also show the academic standard in the same way, and we'll see what that looks like here in a second. But if you went to a US university, you'll have a transcript. So we evaluate it and make it look the same way. We also have a US grading system that we compare it to and make it equivalent to. It's a little bit about what evaluation does. It really takes Bio 101 in India to the US and was that the same equivalent to. Now, recognition is a little different. It's that next step further. It really refers to the acceptance of the academic credentials earned abroad or a credential evaluation report. And it's determined by the institutional recipients or the decision makers. Your student may have an evaluation report that says your bachelor's degree from Mexico is the same as a bachelor's degree in the US. For example, a teaching degree, as both of my parents were teachers in Mexico. And then they come to the US, they come to Austin, Texas, where I am, and they have that evaluation report that says, hey, I have a bachelor's degree in teaching. That doesn't mean that the state of Texas, where they want to be teachers, that they have to accept, that TEA has to accept that evaluation. They're the decision makers. Other decision makers other than licensing bodies include employers and academic institutions. For example, the University of Texas and Texas A&M are both academic institutions. If my parents went to them and said, hey, I have a bachelor's in education, I want to get my master's in education, UT would take that bachelor's, translate it, and evaluate it themselves. They have their own evaluation department, A&M would do the same separately, and those evaluations may look different. And I always like to make the point, it's not because those transcripts are necessarily international. That happens to anyone. So my bachelor's degree from Austin, Texas, when I applied for master's programs, many different master's programs gave me different evaluations. Like some wanted me to take extra courses that I hadn't taken, and some didn't have that requirement. So it really is up to the decision maker. Same with licensing bodies. This isn't just because it's international, but this is also for all other bachelor's degrees. Is evaluating telling if it's equivalent, whereas translation specifies which courses were taken? Evaluation does both, which courses were taken and is it equivalent, and also what scores did they make? A translation simply translates from one language to another. If it said math in Spanish, it's going to say math in English. That's it. It doesn't mean that that math counts as the math in the US. And as the note says, evaluations are really advisory in nature. So those different licensing agencies, employers, academic institutions, they can have different rules about who they accept and what evaluators. WES is not always the evaluator you should choose. We want to make that clear, though we work for WES and think it's a great evaluation and have been around a very long time. It's over 50 years. That doesn't mean that we're the best choice every single time. In the US, there's no universally accepted credential evaluation service, and there's not one across the world either, but we don't have that Ministry of Education that some of your students may be coming to you and expecting. And so what that means is that every school and employer, state or professional licensing board, you should check with them prior to recommending an evaluation even. For example, if a student is thinking they want to go get their master's at UT, I wouldn't recommend they go run and get an evaluation at an evaluation company because UT is going to do their own. So there's no point for them to spend the money that UT is going to tell them anyways what they accept or don't. However, if they're thinking, I want to be a teacher in the state of Texas, TA has a great website for international credentials, the rules that they have for them and what evaluation companies they do accept. So you would go to that specific licensing agency, make sure you read their website and understand that there's only certain companies they will accept. And same with employers. Some employers do require evaluations for international transcripts. For instance, Austin Community College, they had a list of accepted evaluators, whereas other employers might not. Like if you go work at HEB, they might not need that. Or even if you want to become a manager, they might just need to know that you have a bachelor's degree. You just put that down and that counts as the credential recognition that they need to have. This is another reason that I say don't just run and have them get an evaluator because this costs money. It really depends on the service and the area of specialization. Being a teacher and getting that evaluated versus if you were a doctor in another country and you want to become a doctor again in the US, that cost is going to vary significantly between those two different types of jobs. Keep that in mind. And also some evaluations expire. WES's does not expire, but as you look at different evaluation companies, you might find that some have expiration dates. Some of them has to do with licensure regulations. So the licensing board is making a rule saying the evaluation can't be more than X years old, or they want one as recent as X years ago. An ESL level 1 student, not necessarily the time for them to get an evaluation. As they get into ESL 4, as they're looking at community college courses, potentially ESOL courses, they might be getting closer to taking a look at this and saying, okay, maybe now's the time. And again, knowing which evaluator they need. If you're not sure or somebody's really adamant, I recommend using NACES. NACES is the National Association of Credential Evaluation Services, and they have reputable organizations. There's tons of evaluators out there, and some of them are not up to par. So NACES ensures that you have that kind of stamp of approval that this is a good evaluating company and that they will get all their documents back because many evaluation companies actually require them to send in originals. So keep that in mind if they don't want to lose that. NACES is one, WES is under NACES, where we're one of the founding members of that organization. So at WES, we have two different types of evaluation reports, and many evaluators will also have different types and they'll have different names. So you want to make sure you kind of read through that or have your student read through that. But at WES, we have two. We have document by document and course by course. And it's kind of just what it sounds like. The document by document is looking at one document. And when you get that evaluation report, it's just simply one document saying, yes, that's a bachelor's degree. The course by course actually takes a look at each individual course. You think of it more for like transfer credits or graduate school or licensure. You're going to need a full transcript of what courses were taken and what scores were made on a GPA scale. This is what a document by document looks like. It's usually required maybe for freshman admissions of university, or maybe employment is all you would need it for. This report highlights the equivalency of your credentials. So for this, it would be a bachelor's degree, 4 years is all it says. And it describes the credential, like where you got it from, what year, what school, and that's it. It's just one piece of paper that kind of has that summary information. This is a course by course. So as I was saying earlier, something you're probably familiar with if you did study in the US, your transcript probably looked a lot like this. So it has years, the credits you took in those years. The credit system is a US thing. That's important too. That's part of the evaluation system that we do. The grades on the A through F scale. So again, that's a US scale. I know that many other countries do not have the same scale, like 0 to 100, A, B, C, D, F. They don't have that, or a GPA. So it kind of gives you all of that in the US system. But this is what the actual course by course would look like. And at Wes, there's a flat fee. So what that means is that you pay one fee regardless of the amount of things you need evaluated. We allow you to pay a little bit more, like 10, 20 bucks more, to keep that online forever. Really recommend, if Wes is an allowable evaluator, that you use the one that's a little bit more so that they can keep it forever. But otherwise, this is what you would get, that one course by course analysis.
Just quickly go over 6 different resources that might be of use to you or some of your students. These are all resources that pertain to the credential evaluation itself. Wes has many easy to understand FAQs on credential evaluation for both institutions and those serving immigrants, refugees like you all, and then also immigrants, refugees themselves, that can allow you to understand what a credential evaluation is, like we said, but also related questions like what the potential cost would be, how long it would last, and what type you might need. That would be this link. The required documents also, this is a huge thing, is that there are many different credential evaluators. They all require different documents. Wes requires an official transcript and degree from the institution itself, not from the individual. So this is the main thing. This is how Wes can authenticate the credentials and say, this is correct, this is an official transcript from this individual's university, and we can tell you with 100% certainty that it is equivalent to this. This link will provide you with information on what documents exactly Wes requires. And then this is just a free tool that people can use before they decide to invest the money in getting a credential evaluation that can help you understand what exactly your degree might be used for. A credential evaluation is not nothing. It is, I think, Wes is around $170. So before people decide to invest that money, you can use this tool to see, is my degree actually going to be worth it? So for instance, the amount of time that you spend in a degree program differs by country, and it is not in every case equivalent to what it would be in the US. So if you find, for instance, that the degree that you undertook in another country is not quite equivalent to a bachelor's degree, you might want to go back and do some courses before you decide to spend an additional $200 on this credential evaluation, and that can help you understand what exactly it would be. So this is what the degree equivalency tool looks like. It's based on Wes's proprietary data system, which has information from almost every university in the world and from our past 50 years of experience. Here, you would just put in your information. Mine's already here. And then once it loads, here. So it's very simple. For instance, I went to graduate school in France. So here, country of education, I would just put France. Degree, I'll say, was a degree of political science. Like Letty mentioned, I'll just put political science again. The number of years that people undertake education is different in every country. In France, an undergraduate degree is only 3 years. Here, I'll say 3 years, and we can see what exactly it would be equivalent to. This lists every university. It could be every university in France, but I'm just looking for mine specifically, which was the Institute of Political Science. So that's easy. You just click continue, and then here you'll see it has all of your information here. I received my education in France. It was a diploma of political science. The major was political science. It was 3 years long. Here's my institution, and then you press continue. Then you review what you had, and of course, there's an option to add other credentials. So if someone has multiple, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or higher, you can add all of them here, and it will tell you what it is equivalent to. it will give you the comparison. This is equivalent to a master's degree. This is based on Wes's proprietary information because the Institute of Political Science in Paris actually only offers graduate degrees. So this would be a master's degree because of the amount of time and also the coursework. This is just an easy thing for people to be able to use. I would recommend if you have students who are not quite sure exactly what their education is, that you just give them this so they can see just a quick look at what it might be. Of course, this might not match exactly what the credential evaluation is, but it will give you a much better understanding of what your degree is. In Europe, bachelor's degrees are usually 3 years. In the UK, master's degree is only 1 year. So it's really difficult for some people to understand what exactly their degree might be equivalent to. Here are 3 additional resources that are somewhat related, and then more resources that are professionally oriented. WES has a number of resources, including one that allows you to save your credential evaluation forever online. Another option that we developed recently is a digital badge, which is a thing that you can add to your LinkedIn that shows you essentially like this person has a credential that has been verified by WES as true and equivalent to X. On LinkedIn, you can write whatever you'd like. I mean, LinkedIn is not verifying exactly what you've done, but with the WES digital badge, it is a verification that this person's credentials are authentic and that they are equivalent to an American degree. So that's just one resource that we've developed, especially important, I think, now as people really utilizing LinkedIn for networking and to find jobs. The other one is an iGPA calculator, which allows you to convert the grades that you received abroad to the American grading scale. Just for an example, in France, the grading scale is out of 20, and a 15 out of 20, which in the US would be equivalent to a D, is actually considered to be an A. So this just based on WES's proprietary data, takes everything in and then spits out an estimated GPA. On the actual credential evaluation, the course by course, you would get the real authenticated GPA, but this gives you a very close understanding of what it would be. Again, I think it's just very helpful for people to understand, especially if they're trying to enter education in the US or something that requires a minimum GPA, because it's very difficult to compare scales that are drastically different. And if you can see that your GPA does not meet the minimum or does not even get close, there are other options for you to consider, and it might not be the option for you to just enter into a program that you are not qualified for. That's one example. And then WES has also developed national career pathway guides that are compendiums of information for people to understand how licensed professions in the US are set up and gives them a number of different options. WES has a career pathways landing page, including one online interactive guide in which you can lay out all of your professional experience and your education, and it can suggest for you what the next step would be for this profession. So it offers academic, licensing, and certification requirements, links to informational resources and strategies for alternative careers. For instance, if you were a nurse in another country and then you see that the licensing pathway forward is just too difficult or too costly for you and you'd like to continue using your skills, but not necessarily as a nurse, it would give you alternative suggestions, perhaps being a clinician or a science teacher, other things where you are not necessarily starting from scratch, but you are able to utilize your education and experience. And like I mentioned, these are 10 professions that are licensed. So dentistry, information technology, pharmacy, architecture, accounting, engineering, teaching, and nurses. And then at the bottom of this also, we have listed local career pathway guides, which are career pathway guides for each state because licensure is decided at the state level for a number of different states, I think including Texas. If you have students who are new to Texas or have an intention of moving elsewhere, this would be a good place to send them because it gives them both an understanding of what the profession is nationally, but also locally, and can help guide them to the correct website or to the correct licensing information. This would take you to a number of different guides developed by Upwardly Global, who you all might be familiar with, but is the national partner of WESIS, who also works with this population. These would be sort of the Texas guides for individuals seeking to re-enter the profession in nursing, pharmacy, or as a physician. I would encourage people to look over WES's website. We have a number of different resources in addition to these, including an advisor blog. The people who WES serves are immigrants or refugees who are seeking credential evaluations, and the WES advisor blog is the place where we offer advice to our clients. So we have regular blogs or fact sheets on information that is helpful to people. setting up a bank account in the US. That's one, or pursuing your profession in nursing. That could be another. But these are just pieces of advice for newcomers to the US that might be helpful based on questions that people have submitted that we're trying to answer to them. And then we have a number of newsletters that you can find via the general subscription page. Apart from the one that is for immigrants and refugees, we have a more general institutional one that serves information on the work that Letty and myself do. So for instance, we recently published a case study that you can find on our website about how the program that we work on has impacted this population in Texas. Just more information from you all that you can find here. And this is just sort of like an overview of exactly what these tools are. So the Career Pathways resource, like I mentioned, that's that specific page. And these are exactly what it does. So in addition to outlining the career and academic pathways in specific fields, they include information on transferable skills. And these are sort of the 5 main buckets that the guides cover. So strategies for achieving success, resources to support the success, the requirements for licensure, different case studies. So these I think are helpful for people to understand because it just provides you an example, like this individual entered the US, they had this education and this experience, and this is what they chose to move forward. And then, like I said, alternative career opportunities so that people are not starting from scratch. Even if they're not entering the profession they conducted abroad, they are still able to utilize at least some of the education experience from that career in a new career in the US. And then finally, we have a map of all 50 states and different programs that support internationally trained immigrants and refugees in the US. There are quite a number of programs in Texas. And if you are looking at this and feel that your institution hosts a program that supports this population specifically that's not on the map, there's a place to join the US program map so you can submit information about your own program and we can add it if we believe that it fits. You can filter for states, different program areas. These are career preparation, advanced contextualized ELL, or licensing, different organization types. But if you scroll down, you will get to the Texas part. So here you'll see Texas has 6 programs. One of those is Synergy Texas AEL. It's a close SIP partner, a network of AEL providers across the state. And these are just other places that could potentially help students of yours that are internationally trained or internationally educated. But these are specific programs and resources to this population. If you have a question that you're not sure to answer, this could be an option to turn to say, I would suggest contacting these individuals. They have lots of experience serving this population, and they might have better answers for you. There can be 2 separate costs associated, one for translation, one for evaluation. So you just echo that. It's really important to understand exactly what an institution requires. Some just require translation, which is a direct translation from one language to English on exactly what's written on one piece of paper to another piece of paper. It's not at all an equivalency, so it doesn't say this is like it would be in the US. Instead, it is a direct translation. So it would say, this says Bachelor of whatever. Typically, you can receive that much faster within a week. It's much cheaper versus an evaluation, which really is an equivalency. There's lots of data required in order to compare one's credentials to American credentials, and it is more expensive because of the time and data required to be able to create that. It's really important to see what exactly is required because the cheaper and faster one might be all that's needed.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.